So, hopefully you didn't miss it. A couple of days ago, Arena revealed the first teaser trailer and announcement of the name for the next expansion, End of Dragon, set in Cantha. And the trailer featured Cunhavang, a dragon, a very prominent dragon, not Elder Dragon, but a character we've been excited to see, in conversation with a mysterious new character who presumably is also a dragon of some sort. And there was really a lot to think about and to digest with the lore. Now, I gave you guys my initial proposals and thoughts. I wanted to expand on that today. There's been a format of video I've wanted to do for a long time, usually after I do some kind of cool video essay and that really gets the comments churning, where basically I look at your comments kind of Q&A style and I have a discussion with you guys and we look at each other's takes, because I think that my opinions have changed a good amount since the first time seeing that trailer. And well, I wanted to go through it now. For anybody who happens to have clicked this video without seeing the previous one, please check out the link in the description first, figure out what you think, and then come on over. So I'm gonna pull a couple of your comments, guys, and bounce back off of them. So first of all, Michael Chu came in very early with this message saying, quoting the line, "It doesn't have to be this way," and said, "This could be referring to the transformation of the dragon cycle a la Glint's legacy, and the male voice could be the deep sea dragon. We know Cunhavang defends the mortal races, so it's possible she's either in or come to the same conclusion as Glint. She could be in the same position as Glint was, telling her master, hey, let's do things differently. Except the deep sea dragon isn't insane like Kraukatoric and genuinely believes that the cycle as it stands is necessary. That would be a cool story, more of an ideological fight between dragons." So I do agree with this. First, I don't think that this is necessarily a male voice. I think the devs are going to be cagey about specifically gendering the way that the dragons are now, especially with what we've seen they do with Jormag. And Jormag is particularly who I want to talk about in response to this. I think you're pretty much on the ball with most of this, but the idea that an ideological fight between dragons is going to be something new, I'm not sure about. Because really, the Icebrood saga, maybe you guys aren't playing enough of or thinking too deeply about right now, but Jormag already is in that quite cool position where it feels like Jormag is a very keen mind and is thinking and is deliberating, and we don't really know Jormag's motivations at all. Right up to the most recent patch, Jormag could be doing anything. It might be trying to deceive us, and it might be aggressive and antagonistic, and maybe that will be revealed in the end. But Jormag said some interesting stuff, and so maybe after this whole Icebrood saga story is done, having that get again with the deep sea dragon and so on might not be worth a repeat, or it might still be. I mean, I probably couldn't get enough of that kind of subject material. But yeah, I do think that, you know, if they're couching the trailer, the teaser for the whole expansion, as a conversation and an arguing of two different viewpoints, yeah, there's going to be that bent to this expansion without a shadow of a doubt. And yeah, it's all about Glint's legacy, right? We know that Glint and Cunhavang were active on the world at roughly the same time, and presumably for hundreds, if not thousands of years. But we don't actually have any examples in the lore yet of the two having a conversation. I really like the idea that this expansion will introduce that there was a chapter in Glint's life as she was figuring out her legacy, where she went to Cunhavang and spoke with Cunhavang. I think that would be really cool, especially if this expansion is going to reveal that Cunhavang is in kind of the same position Glint was and is like the defender of mortals and so on. The idea that they have like a dragon council or whatever you want to call it, I know it's only the two of them, is really interesting, and I'd love to see some kind of like flashback to that meeting. Hell, the visions of the past could end up showing us that kind of thing, and maybe this is where Glint's legacy came from. The thing is, we know it as Glint's legacy, and we know really that Cunhavang didn't seem to have been much of a collaborator with what Glint did. So if the two characters did meet up, I think that back then they may have had slightly different takes, which is why we don't say, like for example here in Path of Fire, when you play Path of Fire, you learn a lot about Glint's legacy, like at Kesho and stuff. And just Cunhavang's nowhere to be seen. The only reason for that is that Cunhavang must have had a slightly different idea to Glint. And how does that now factor into the conversation Cunhavang is still happening all these years later after Glint is out of the picture? You know, and if Cunhavang really did collaborate, why didn't Cunhavang maybe step in after Glint was lost, give Vlast a little bit more direction, Vlast, you know, being the lonely entity it was without a champion or a scion? So all this stuff I think is going to be really interesting, and we'll be seeing these conversations for sure. The next one is from some panda who wanted to talk about the line "They need me," which I didn't really talk about at all in my video. A few people mentioned that and said, "Oh, WP, why didn't you talk about this line?" I guess I just assumed it was Kunavang saying "they need me," and it was just a defense of mortals again. It was, the mortals need me to save them from the dragons or this cycle or whatever this Kunavang's interpretation of everything is. But actually, I guess it's the other voice that says "they need me." So there's different ways you can look at that. Now, some panda says it's probably one of the most important lines to speculate on. Could they refer to the mortals? So maybe this new character is somewhat empathetic to mortals, as it does acknowledge humans are brilliant despite their short lives. We say humans here, but we mean all the sentient races, right? Again, I don't want to neglect the Char and the Norn and the Asura and the Savari. Or they could mean the Elder Dragons, who seem to have forgotten what an ending means, and this new character wants to remind them of that in End of Dragons. So let it be 2021 already. I know, I feel that, right? So yeah, I like the second of these interpretations the most, that this new character is saying the Elder Dragons need me. If we're going with the idea that this other character is Mother, which, by the way, I'm not as sure about anymore as I was in that original video, but if we're going with the idea that this new voice is Mother, well, yeah, it makes sense that Mother would be very concerned and worried that so many of the Elder Dragons are getting offed right now. It's weird. It depends what kind of Mother this is, because if all Mother cares about is that these entities exist, it doesn't care about the vessel, just the entity, then, you know, it would be nurturing and protective of, say, Aurene, and maybe it's not too upset with what's happening, because we are still ultimately seeking to keep Elder Dragons existent. We're just trying to change their disposition a little bit. But if Mother really particularly cares about Kraukatoric, and now Kraukatoric's gone, and if Mother really cares about Jormag and so on, then yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense that in this trailer, Mother would be saying, "They need me." There's another thing here, though. When we heard Kraukatoric say "Mother" back at the end as he died, I feel like the implication was Mother wasn't around anymore. I mean, this would be such an ancient and, you know, crazy old entity. If Mother is still around and is still capable of helping, where the hell's it been? Surely it would have been roused the second we defeated Zaitan. Surely at that point, it would have been like, okay, no, something's going on here. I got to deal with this. Unless the idea is this Mother, you know, is dealing with a ton of realities or planes in the mist. You know, it's kind of a Captain Marvel style thing where it's such a powerful entity with its fingers in so many places that it just can't focus everywhere at once. And the 6 Elder Dragons that we know are just small scale ultimately. And maybe that is what ArenaNet wants to do, because at the end of the day, they're looking to do stories beyond this expansion. They're looking to do stories beyond the Elder Dragons, it seems. So establishing like this upper echelon might be the way to go. I haven't ever really liked that about Guild Wars, that it's always been in this race to establish, okay, what's the tier above, what's the tier above, what's the tier above. You know, we started with the gods, and then they had to be sort of replaced by the idea of these older gods, and then they had to be kind of replaced by this idea of these older entities, the Elder Dragons, and now we're like going up again, but I guess whatever keeps it going. And let me be very clear as well, something I never mentioned in the previous video, but the expansion is called End of Dragons. I did talk about the idea of like this being almost a metaphor for the idea of you know, MMOs that can't end, and is this going to lead into Guild Wars 3 and stuff, and I was kind of loose and vague about that. Obviously, I'm not the only one that was thinking of these things, and I think it was Ruby did throw out a tweet on behalf of the company and did specifically say, look, this is not the end of Guild Wars 2. We have lots of stories, lots that we want to do. It's not going to be End of Dragons and then that's it. We're going to keep going. So there is that quote. I want you guys to bear that in mind. I think no matter what the studio's plans are, it would be smart for them to say this. You never want to tell an MMO community that an end is coming. You know, they didn't for Guild Wars 1, even though there clearly was an end coming. Well, in some ways they did, but they would want people to be invested and keep going. They want people to buy End of Dragons believing that there's a lot to come, not tell them, oh, don't worry, Guild Wars 3 is coming out anyway, so don't worry about it. So there is that to consider, but at the same time, I have never, in all my years covering this studio and this franchise, seen the devs blatantly go out of their way to barefaced lie Like, they would lie through omission, and they'll omit details, and they'll avoid giving you the full picture if there's something, you know, less than satisfactory they want you to know. But they would never go out on their own to specifically lie to you like that. So I do believe they have more stories after End of Dragons. I do. Even if they're just in a living world format, or even if they're, I don't know, something weird and different because they're not to do with the dragons. I know a lot of people are bored of dragons, certainly. It's just in my mind, and you guys don't have to agree with this at all. I appreciate a lot of people won't. But in my mind, Guild Wars 2 really is the story of dragons. And I find it very weird to consider what this MMO will be after that. It makes me think of the MCU in a way. It's kind of like post-Thanos MCU and how successful we think that's going to be and so on. So we will see. But anyway, yes, let it be 2021 already. Next comment is from Alpha Momo here, who says, those who face eternity easily forget what a lifetime means, what an ending means. I feel like this is aimed at Kunavang, who herself has lived for ages. It's trying to remind her of the fact that some things are fleeting. As for the built their lives upon the very thing line, a simple look at the past would tell us this refers to the Jade Wind, and how the Luxon and Kurzik in particular adapted to their new environment and rebuilt their lives after having their way of life destroyed. It may not be as exciting, but that's the most obvious explanation. Finally, regarding Primordus, I still feel its fate is tied to Jormag. Don't forget they're each other's weakness and have been linked through the story in multiple instances. There's also the appearance of the Stone Summit during the Visions of the Past episode, showing that the corruption by Primordus. Heck, maybe the reason Jormag is trying to manipulate us is to get rid of Primordus. So this was a really fun comment. I want to look at the second two notes here. First of all, they built their lives upon the very thing line. Now, you have very arrogantly stated here, a simple look at the past would tell us this refers to the Jade Wind. I refute that. Now, a lot of people have made similar sentiments. A lot of people have said, I watched the trailer, I heard that line, and it made me think of the Jade Wind. I'm not sure I think of the Jade Wind, because the actual line is that they built their lives upon the very thing that sought to destroy them. Now, I know that the Jade Wind would have destroyed them, and did destroy several of them, and yes, they built their lives upon the Jade and so on, but it wasn't seeking to do anything. I think the word seeking in there really speaks to an idea of intent. And I know that we've also heard and compared elder dragons to being these mindless, almost natural disasters that also do not have an intent. But I'm beginning to believe that those descriptions of the elder dragons are falling kind of out of date. Particularly when we have Mordremoth, who clearly had an intent, Jormag, who has an intent, Kralkatorrik, who has an intent, though it was, you know, very warped and twisted by his insanity and the consumption of too many forms of magic and so on. So I think that the word intent there, or the word sought, really makes me think, no, this is not the Jade Wind. That was a natural disaster. Shiro never went into that intending to petrify everything. Shiro went into that with a very different mindset, having been manipulated by the fortune teller and Abaddon, and I don't think really knew the consequence of what was coming out of it. There was no intent there beyond Abaddon, and is the trailer talking about that? While at the same time the visuals pan through draconic looking stuff. I can't see it, guys. I don't think that that's what it is. I think that they are talking about the Elder Dragon more than anything else. And look, the idea that it's the Jade Wind, it matches the idea that these people are resilient, right? They've struggled through hardships and they've learned to adapt and they've learned to survive. But that's not like unique in any way. You could say that about any society that exists within Tyria and how they've, you know, managed to overcome what they've been assailed by. So if that's what you're referencing, why dedicate a huge chunk of this trailer to something so banal? So I'm not sure I buy the Jade Wind thing. A lot of people did immediately think that. And maybe it's that, and maybe that's as far as it goes. I just think that would be a boring thing to laden the trailer with. Because we're in Guild Wars 2 now, everyone. We're dealing with new stories. It's not about the Jade Wind anymore. I know that some of you guys might just be getting introduced to this setting and thinking, you know, that's really exciting and so on. But really, that was a story to do with Shiro, and it's that chapter feels kind of closed to me. On that note, I will add, however, it wouldn't surprise me if the new expansion does look at the Jade Wind, at least in part, to tie the events of the Jade Wind to Elder Dragon stuff. Because it really feels like an Elder Dragon scale disaster. And right now, all that we have to explain exactly why that happened is not very well fleshed out and detailed. Talks a little bit about the harvest ceremony and the power of Dwayna. And we've obviously got endless discussions about how the gods are somewhat feeling connected to the dragons in various ways and disconnected from the dragons in various ways. So there's a lot of haze there. And I think this could be a great opportunity for the studio to step in and point out that the Jade Wind was very directly connected because there was an Elder Dragon asleep underneath the Harvest Temple, just like the Central Transfer Chamber situation with Prime Orders or whatever. And thus, it all gets bound together, and thus, maybe then the trailer line, you know, does work. So that wouldn't surprise me either, and I'm on board for that. And then your other comment about Prime Orders. You feel its fate is tied to Jormag. I think that that's very likely as well. Look, my fan desires to see Prime Orders be last are very strong, and that's what I really want, but that doesn't mean that it's substantiated in any particularly deep way. I just like the idea of a bookend. I've always been compelled by Primal Orders. Even when we got to see his head in the living world, and just what a freaking titan he is, has just made me think that's got to be the last guy. But really, that's a place where, you know, you shouldn't take my word as gospel on that. I could very much see Prime Orders being dealt with even right here in the Icebrood Saga. I really could, because of all these reasons you've mentioned, that he does seem reasonably well tied to Jormag. We have a quote from Jormag, remember? Talking about there being really dangerous things and we need to ally up. Now, that could be referencing this weird new creature in this trailer and the deep sea dragon and all that kinds of dangerous stuff. Or it could all just be a play dealing with Prime Orders. And yeah, the Stone Summit are in there a little bit. We've seen a bit of its influence. I still hope for a return to the depths and a Surin-centric expansion in some degree and a big Prime Orders plot, but we might find he's dealt with by the time End of Dragons even gets there. We might. Fire versus Ice, who doesn't like that? I even read, now I haven't pulled this quote up, I apologize to that person, but one of you guys had a really weird comment that was a prediction that in this season we would have Fire versus Ice, those two dragons, and the end of that fight would result in, you know, what happens when you melt ice? You get water, right? So someone was believing that maybe a water dragon would be born from this, and that is what would rouse the current deep sea dragon into action, and that's what triggers the whole Cantha arc in the start of End of Dragons. And that would also reveal to us how Elder Dragons are born in a way through the clashing of other Elder Dragons, which is all very crazy and a little bit unprecedented at the moment, but I could imagine them going to that side as well. So I think that was a pretty cool theory that I kind of wanted to highlight for you guys. So, you never know. Prime Orders might be sooner than we think. Kyle B said, honestly, Lion's Arch is boring now. If a tidal wave drowns it, I'm so okay with that, as long as I can be a part of it, lol. So yeah, this is in response to the fact I mentioned the whole Hydra attack concept art thing. Look, as much as I want to see a giant Hydra or something with that concept art, because it just looks so cool happen with Lion's Arch, I have to admit, really thinking about it, I'm kind of over the whole Attack on Lion's Arch thing. I think there are a lot of people in the community that don't appreciate how much work it was for the studio to fully realize a badass pirate port town and then make like the crazy decision to destroy that town, rebuild it with something that's very aesthetically different and a lot of people don't enjoy. You know, Disneyland Lion's Arch is not a fan favorite for everyone. I mean, I'm sure there are people who are content with it and they don't whine, but there are also whiners who don't like it. And so now they've got like this weird fragmented thing where half the people like it, half the people don't like it. And so then when someone comes along and says they should do it again, do another destruction of Lion's Arch, go through all that rigmarole, I feel like been there, done that. I don't think you guys should expect a Hydra attack that destroys Lion's Arch and then we can do another version of Pirate LA. Think about all the achievements that hook into various elements of Lion's Arch now. Hell, half the Legendary Collection ones are broken from what I remember doing them earlier in the year. I just don't think it's a good idea, and I don't think ArenaNet will go for it again. We've seen that whole idea of destroying the main town in the game, and you either liked it or you didn't, but let's not keep going in circles, I guess. Let's just have something cinematic, a big wave. Maybe not a, you know, Aura's Rising style wave, but something along those lines. And then that'll be enough. So next we got Low Giddy, who says, here's a thought. Could the imagery of Cantha we see in the trailer actually be a vision of the past from the Scrying pool in Eye of the North? Maybe the landscape has changed more than we think. So yeah, I'd mentioned that Cantha looked very much the same in the teaser. And again, that teaser is not in engine, so maybe when we actually go there in game, it will look very different. I have no doubt it will look like mind-blowingly pretty. I mean, look at the footage we're looking at right now of Path of Fire. The Crystal Desert did not look this good in GW1. Path of Fire still, to me, I think it's absolutely gorgeous. There's a reason I'm running around here in this discussion video where the footage isn't that related. It's partly because I'm on a skimmer and we've got a new skimmer update out, but the other thing is I just think these areas are amazing to look at, and I'm sure that they'll do something great with Cantha 2. The teaser is not in engine, and they could have done all kinds of differences with the aesthetic. But I really like the idea that this is a vision, because last time we saw a trailer like this or a teaser like this that had a different art style, the devs were clever and efficient about utilizing it even in game. So do you remember the Heart of Thorns cinematic that showed like the vines and sort of the general outline of Morjamoth, and then he sort of coiled up as we entered the Maguma jungle? Well, yeah, that got placed as a cutscene right at the end of Silver Wastes when you're beginning the expansion, right? It actually was shown to us. And I feel like you could be totally onto something. We could get this right at the start of End of Dragons from the Scrying pool. It would be a bit boring if our main motivation to start everything now is just, oh, the Scrying pool showed us. But it's a powerful tool, and I think ArenaNet could use this. They could hook that in, and any opportunity to get a beautiful trailer like that in-game, I say go for it. So I like that idea, Low Giddy. I definitely do. Ted Jackson says, Jawmag in Whisper in the Dark said, terrible things lurk just beyond the horizon. In time, you'll need me. So, yes, is what's going to happen here. We fight Jawmag, dispatch of them, and then suddenly we realize that, and maybe Primordus too, and we realize that the last dragon we've left is the really sneaky one that was hiding the whole time. It was the Deep Sea Dragon, who now exits stealth, so to speak, and reveals itself far more abominable and worse than anything we've ever known. Maybe. Ricardo Cruz says, could the mysterious character have been an envoy? So, I don't think so, personally. I think that the envoys are going to be a weird part of this expansion. Either the devs do really well and find a way to integrate them properly, or they'll be really hand-wavy about it. I suppose they could go for the middle ground too, where they attempt to deal with the subject material, but unfortunately all the pieces don't quite connect, and it feels a bit flimsy. Think, for example, in Path of Fire with the library scene with Cormyr. If you remember my most recent playthrough of that, when we got to that library scene and we really tried to dig into every line and what it meant and why and how in the broader context of the universe, it was a mess. Maybe the envoy stuff will be a mess too. I would be very proud and excited of ArenaNet if they can deal with the envoys, but I don't think it's them in the trailer here. Not really. Maybe we'll get some shallow nods to them, but I'm not too confident. What about you guys? The envoys also had like a very precise kind of ethereal voice going on, and I suppose there was kind of a feminine envoy it could have been speaking. But I'm not buying it right now. It's a great idea, though. Ruben had another suggestion for the mysterious figure. What if it's Lissa? Maybe Lissa didn't leave Tyria and needled with Cantha during the dragon attach to capitalize on the situation. Maybe that's why Balthazar got help from her and didn't curse her like the other gods. So Lissa's the other thing. You know, we're all thinking about the big finale where Kraukatoric died and we get the mother bomb. But yeah, there was another really sneaky, big suggestion at the very end of Path of Fire. And that was the Lissa thing. That they're still kind of suggesting something's going on with Lissa. Lissa has always been my favorite god ever since I was a Mesmer main in the original game. I am so keen on more Lissa stuff. And look at the art style of this teaser. Kind of purpley, kind of magical, ethereal. If it's any kind of feeling color or associated gods, I would have to say Lissa. So yeah, maybe you're onto something. I hadn't thought about this at all. But they could do something with Lissa in this expansion. Would it be as extensive as the whole Balthazar thing and how much Path of Fire was about the gods? I think no. I don't think we're going to find 2 expansions in a row that really give a huge emphasis on the god stuff. But Lissa could have been meddling down here. They always say that Lissa's kind of favored land and stuff was Vabi, but you know, that's a human interpretation and so on. Maybe Lissa was doing stuff down there. I really like this one. Very clever. So, I wanted to leave off as well, guys, just to talk a little bit more about the idea of the Deep Sea Dragon whether it's alive or not. So in my video, as I talked through and as I watched the teaser, I became slowly more convinced that maybe the deep sea dragon was dead already. Now that's really exciting to me, but I'm not sure I really believe in it anymore. Quite a few of you guys seem a bit disgruntled by the concept too, because for as many people as there are bored by the Elder Dragon story at this point, I think there are many more who still really want to kill dragons. At least that's what I'm getting from looking at all of your feedback. And a lot of people think it would be a disappointment or a cop-out to have the dragon already dead. To me, it's like, well, look, there's 6 of them. We've already had a ton of big dragon fights. Do something different. Do something interesting. Reveal that maybe one of them is already dead. I think that would be the most exciting thing to me. But maybe that's not true for everyone. And maybe ArenaNet knows that that's not true for everyone. And they will have us fight the deep sea dragon. In which case the teaser is kind of a very simple thing where maybe it's Kunavang plus deep sea dragon. And, you know, they said it's a new character. Is the deep sea dragon a new character? In some ways, yes. I mean, we have 1 letter of its name. 1 letter. That's it. And so maybe they're just happy to string us along with that. It could even be like the scion of a deep sea dragon. I've seen a few people talking about the idea of scions and champions, and maybe in Cantha this is a world where a champion's been destroyed. Maybe, yeah, maybe it's that. Maybe it's an emissary of the deep sea dragon to a certain extent. The only thing I kind of don't like about it as well is I've always imagined the deep sea dragon as the dragon of fear, like a Cthulhu-esque monster of pure horror and tentacle, this abomination. Now that, to me, does not pair with something you can have a conversation with. I think it's got to be the horror of the alien, the horror of the thing you cannot understand. It is just too different and dark and ancient and primordial. That is the deep sea dragon to me, and it's not something you have an ideological battle with. Jormag is, to me, that story, and we're in the middle of that. So then this teaser comes and gives us a little bit more of it. I wonder where it all sits. I kind of think the idea that the Canthans already dealt with it and they're badasses is fun. But maybe that is not the take. And I'm open to accept that. I think I got overly convinced by it in the course of the video. And now I'm not so much. So there you go, guys. That's just some follow-up thoughts and some response. Let me know what you thought about this format of video. Very often I want to do stuff like this because I do love the comments. I do read them. And I do want to know what you guys are thinking. So there you have it. Thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Give me even more. And we'll see what we think as we go forwards. Great teaser. I'll catch you next time. Where we probably are going to be learning how to swim this thing. And we'll be talking more about that.